Hello everyone, and welcome back to imchronicallywriting. I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea for everyone to leave a comment saying where you're listening. Hello everyone, and welcome back to imchronicallywriting. I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea for everyone to leave a comment saying where you're listening in from in the world. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you're enjoying these videos. I also post these stories on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you prefer to listen to these stories while driving. You can find these links in the description. But now it's time. Go ahead and wind down, dim your lights, and slip into bed so we may begin tonight's story. Tonight's story is titled The Bare Steps. The flashing cameras and shouting voices of paparazzi were a part of everyday life of Sophia Langston, the breakout star of the year. At 23, she had it all: fame, money, an army of fans, and innovations to every event imaginable. Her face adored magazine covers, her voice echoed in the radio interviews, and her name trended regularly on social media. But behind the glamour, Sophie harbored a secret, a fear she had buried deep since childhood, a fear that had begun to claw its way back into her life. The irrational, suffocating fear of feet, her own and others. As a child, she had hated going barefoot, avoided swimming pools, and cried during family vacations to the beach. Her parents thought she had grown out of it, but she never did. Instead, she learned to hide it behind designer shoes and meticulously planned wardrobe choices. But lately, the fear had become more intense, triggered by something far more sinister than she could explain. It started innocently enough. A fan slid under her door at the luxurious hotel where she stayed during a movie premiere. Her assistant, Danny, typically handled all the fan mail, but this one felt different, more personal. It was handwritten, a rarity this digital age, and the handwriting was elegant, almost obsessive in its precision. Dear Sophie, I followed your career since the beginning. Your beauty is divine, but it's your feet I admire the most. I can imagine them bare, delicate, and perfect. I dream of them every night. Please don't hide them. Let me see them just once, for me, your devoted admirer. Sophie shuddered. Her stomach twisted into knots as she stared at the words. It was nauseating. Somewhere out there fantasizing about her feet, the very thing that repulsed her. She tossed the letter into the trash, trying to shake off the unease, but the words lingered in her mind. Over the next few weeks, more letters arrived. They were always slipped under her hotel door, no matter where she was staying. Her security team was on high alert, yet no one could explain how the letters kept appearing. The tone of the letter grew more intimate, more demanding. Show me your feet, Sophie. I need to see them. Her fear worsened with every letter. Sophie found herself checking the floor around her constantly, avoiding even glimpses of her own feet in mirrors. She refused to go barefoot, even in the comfort of her home. The fear she had once managed to suppress had now taken full control over her life. Danny noticed the changes in her boss, the nervous glances, the jumpiness, the way Sophie would flinch if anyone's foot accidentally brushed against hers. You sure you're okay? Danny asked one afternoon after Sophie abruptly canceled a photo shoot that required her to wear sandals. I'm fine, Sophie muttered, though she knew she was far from it. Then the photos started. One morning, Sophie woke to find an envelope on her doorstep. No note this time, just a series of photographs. Close-ups of her feet, taken without her knowing. Her breath caught in her throat as she flipped through them, each one more invasive than the last. They weren't from a red carpet event or a photo shoot. No, these were from private moments, stepping out of a car, leaving a Pilates class, entering her home. The camera had caught her feet in fleeting, vulnerable moments. The final photo made her blood run cold. It was a picture of her sleeping, one foot peeking out from beneath her bed covers. Her hands trembled as she held the photo. How had someone gotten into her house? How long had they been watching her? Sophie immediately called her security team, who searched every inch of her property but found no sign of forced entry. We'll increase the patrols, ma'am, one of the guards reassured her, but the comfort was hollow. Someone had been in her house, someone who knew her most intimate fear and was preying on it. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps approaching. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps approaching her bed. Every shadow seemed to shift, watching her, waiting. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, but her body stayed alert, on edge, until exhaustion finally claimed her. The next morning, another letter appeared. You looked beautiful while you slept, Sophie. Your foot is even more perfect in person. Don't be afraid. Soon, you'll show me what I want. She bolted upright, her heart pounding. The violation was unbearable. She was trapped in a nightmare, stalked by an unseen predator who knew her deepest fear. Sophie's publicist urged her to take a break, to get out of the spotlight for a while. But how could she escape someone who seemed to follow her everywhere? As the days passed, the psychological toll mounted. Sophie became paranoid, unable to trust anyone. She stopped going outside unless absolutely necessary, hiring private chefs, trainers, and stylists to come to her home. Even then, she found herself watching their every move, wondering if one of them was the stalker. But the worst part was her feet. They had become an unbearable source of anxiety. Every time she glanced down, she half expected to find something, someone, waiting. She began covering them at all times, even wore thick socks to bed. The more she tried to hide them, the more obsessed she became with the idea that her stalker was waiting for the moment she would slip, the moment her feet would be exposed. One evening, after a particular grueling day of back-to-back interviews and events, Sophie returned to her home, feeling utterly drained. Danny had left earlier, and the house was eerily quiet. She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the ever-present anxiety that had plagued her for weeks. Her phone buzzed, a notification popping up. It was an airdrop from an unknown device. She hesitated for a moment before tapping it. A single image appeared on her screen. It was her house. The photo had been taken from just outside, as though the person was standing right in front of her lawn. Her pulse quickened as she rushed to lock all the doors and windows. She called the police, her voice shaking as she explained the situation. They promised to send someone over immediately, but deep down, Sophie knew it wouldn't make a difference. Whoever was stalking her wasn't just some crazed fan. They were methodical, patient, and deeply fixated on her. She glanced down at her feet, now snugly wrapped in her favorite pair of cashmere socks, and felt a sickening wave of nausea. The sensation of being watched had become unbearable, crawling under her skin like an itch she couldn't scratch. She hurried to the bathroom, wanting to splash cold water on her face, anything to calm her nerves. The moment she flicked on the light, she froze. Written in red lipstick on the bathroom mirror were the words, "Take them off, Sophie." Her breath caught in her throat. She stumbled backward, heart racing, the room spinning around her. The police arrived minutes later, but there was no sign of forced entry. Nothing had been stolen, nothing disturbed, except for the ominous message scrawled on her mirror. After that night, Sophie was moved to a secure location by her management team, a remote estate far from the city, with round-the-clock security. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small sliver of relief, hoping the distance would keep her stalker at bay. But it didn't. The letters followed her. One morning, she awoke to find another envelope on her porch. This time, it contained no words, just a simple object, a pair of socks. Her socks, the ones she had worn to bed the night before. The fear that gripped her was unlike anything she had ever felt. She checked the windows, the doors, every possible entry point. Everything was locked, yet someone had been in her room. Someone had taken her socks while she slept. Her fear had now transformed into a living nightmare. Every step she took felt like an exposure, a vulnerability that someone was exploiting. She couldn't walk barefoot, couldn't even look at her feet without a surge of panic. And the fanboy? No. The stalker was growing bolder. One evening, after weeks of living in constant terror, Sophie heard a soft knock at the door of her estate. She checked the surveillance cameras. Nothing. The knock came again, louder this time. With shaking hands, she opened the door, hoping it was one of her security guards, but there was no one there, only a box, neatly wrapped in brown paper, with her name written on it in the same meticulous handwriting as the letters. Inside the box was a single shoe, one of her own, from a red carpet event months ago, and tucked into the shoe another note. "I'll see the other one soon." Sophie moved out the public eye after that night. The police never found her stalker, and no more letters arrived, but she knew, deep down, that it wasn't over. Every night as she lay in bed, she kept her feet hidden beneath the covers, terrified of the day she'd slip, of the moment her stalker would finally see what he wanted, and in the silence of the dark, she could still feel the eyes watching, waiting, because no matter how much distance she had put between herself and the world, he was always just one step behind. Thank you for checking out tonight's story. Hopefully, if you made it this far and that you were tuning in, you were able to enjoy the story that I've written for you guys today. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and follow on whatever platform you're listening from. Comment down below. Comment down below what kind of story I should write next, and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.